On today's show, Laura Heywood interviews
the stars of Little Gem at Irish Repertory Theater, Brenda Meaney, and soon to join us, Lauren O'Leary. Welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews. I'm Laura Heywood, and I met today's guests when I was invited to Irish Rep for an event designed to bring young audiences to see Little Gem, a three-woman play set in Ireland written by a female Irish playwright. I actually met them the second time I saw the show. I went first as a straight-up audience member, and then again to prepare for a talkback I hosted with these two and their co-star, Marsha Mason. We hit it off so well, I had to invite them to come to the studio for a longer sit-down here at Laura Heywood Interviews. Lauren O'Leary plays Amber, a 19-year-old living with her mom, Lorraine, played by Brenda Meaney, who's sitting right next to me. Along with Brenda's mother, Kay, they play out three concurrent reckonings that cause each woman to lean on the other two while coming to terms with her own independence. Little Gem is only playing for a few more days. It finishes a celebrated run on September 8th, and I truly hope you can arrange your schedule to see it in the next few days at Irish Rep. I'm thrilled that Brenda and Lauren have decided to come in and hang out with me on one of their last few days as part of this family, and also so we can continue getting to know each other because they're both such brilliant performers, and whether it's in Little Gem or in whatever they do next, you're definitely going to be seeing a lot more of them. Brenda Meaney, thank you for joining me at Laura Heywood Interviews, and hopefully Lauren will be joining us in just a minute.
Yeah, hopefully. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Tell me about Little Gem. I mean, obviously you don't need to tell me about it because I've seen it twice, and I am excited to talk about how seeing it twice was so much better than double the experience of seeing it once. Like, I feel like I sort of saw two different shows.
Totally.
But for people who are not familiar with it, what's the basic plot?
The basic plot follows the course of a year in three women's lives, three inner city Dublin women from the north side. It's set around 2008, 2009, which was when it was written. And each of the women we meet them in a sort of moment of crisis. So my character, Lorraine, is in the middle of kind of a mental breakdown. She has a bit of a meltdown at work and shouts at people, and it's a whole thing.
I mean, to be fair to Lorraine, the person she yells at sounds like a total...
She's a nightmare.
I mean...
Nightmare.
It sounds like she had it coming.
Completely.
So I forgive Lorraine.
Completely. So there's this like altercation at work that Lorraine has that sort of sets off the events of Lorraine's experience. Likewise, Kay, the grandmother character, played by Marsha Mason, has a moment of crisis where she goes to a doctor because she's reached sort of a breaking point with a particular itch that she can't scratch, and so seeking help in that. And then Amber, the daughter, is also about to meet a crisis, and I don't know if I want to spoil what that is.
I know.
Is that like I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what the website for the show says, and I'm not going to... Oh, yeah, okay, here, I can read it exactly. Young Amber's case of indigestion, or perhaps it's a brutal hangover, grows into something more. ... So... use your imagination, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that we find out finding out what these crises are is not the crux of the story. The story is these women's relationships with each other.
Absolutely, and a movement from their isolation, their sort of self-imposed isolation, towards being a family again. They sort of learn how to come together in a way.
The three of you really feel like a family to me.
Oh, good.
Although I do feel like I relate so much, especially I guess off stage. I feel like both you and Lauren could be like my girlfriends, and so picturing you as mother and daughter. I mean, I bought it on stage.
Good.
But I think part of the idea is that Lorraine was a very young mother.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the sort of reality of our ages, but part of the pleasure of being an actor, right, is that you get to expand beyond what you just are yourself day to day. So I get to play someone who's a little older than I am and who had this experience, which is that she had a kid very, very young.
Right.
Like 17, maybe.
I recently had Lena Hall on the show. I don't know if you're familiar with Lena. She won a Tony Award for Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Yes.
And she's 38 or 39, and she's playing the mother of an 18-year-old in Bat Out of Hell right now.
I really want to see Bat
another
Out of Hell.
UK imported
to
here
us.
yeah.
Exactly.
I think you might be able to.
I
can't remember how much longer.
I think it has another little. I'm hoping that when the show ends, I'll be able to go, because I just recently discovered Meatloaf, which I know is a terrible thing to admit, but I did, and I'm just completely enamored of Meatloaf.
Well, I mean, this is the show to see. I mean, it is like, it's sort of the opposite of Little Gem.
Probably,
it is all
that.
spectacle and all loud and like it.
But you get to sing along.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. And the thing that it does have in common with Little Gem is that it's about it centers around a young a daughter in crisis and her much too young mother.
Yeah. Well, exactly. So I mean, also, let's be honest, women have been playing, mothers of teenagers.
Oh my gosh.
Who are far too young women have been playing mothers of teenagers for centuries.
And yet it doesn't seem to happen that way with men.
No.
Like a man will be 70 and playing a daughter, like a father of a 5-year-old.
Exactly.
Anyway, I've just checked, and Bat Out of Hell plays its final performance on Sunday, September 8th.
Oh man, I'm gonna kick myself.
Wait, do you? There are 2 performances on Sunday. There's a 7 p.m. Do you?
Okay, bye. I'm going.
yours. We
just have a matinee.
The matinee on
we
Sunday.
finish on the matinee,
well,
so I'm gonna.
You can
skip
go to
that
closing
glass
night.
of champagne and go to
The Bat Out of Hell fans are enthusiastic.
Excellent.
I almost said crazy, and I would have meant it in an affectionate way.
A loving way, yeah.
But okay, but we've done enough promoting of that show.
Yes.
I want to. So Little Gem is, first of all, I'm fascinated by the name of the play because Gem. I didn't understand what Little Gem is a person.
Gem is a person,
and
Gem is the grandfather.
In Ireland, you may not know this. I know that you've told me that you are Irish, but you have an American accent.
I do. It's true.
So have you ever lived over there?
I have. So in brief, my parents are both from Dublin, and I was born here and grew up here, but I spent most of my time, I spent a lot of time going back and forth. And then I went there for college. I did my undergrad at Trinity in Dublin, and then I stayed for almost 3 years after.
So you have
I've
the
lived there for about 7
Irish
years.
street cred.
I would like to think. I have Irish friends who consider me Irish, which I think is like the most legit thing. So
as opposed to just like you've got
a Yank.
Yeah.
You're not a Yank who thinks they're Irish.
Or whose parents or ancestors or whatever.
Yeah.
Not that would really matter to me, but in the context of this question, is Gem a common name over there?
No, not to my knowledge. It seems like, from what I've understood from the context of the play, it's a nickname particular to James, the grandfather.
But is it a normal Irish nickname for James? Because the way that Marsha says that name the most, because it's her husband, whereas Lorraine it's her dad.
Yeah.
She says it so that I hear Jim, Jim, which of course I know to be a nickname for James. And in the same way that sometimes with an English accent, like the word that we spell ASS, they will spell ARSE.
Yes.
Whereas if we said arse, that would sound weird. But
it does sound a bit weird,
saying ASS in an English accent or an Irish accent sounds the same as saying ARSE.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm even making sense. My brain is a little bit in a fog. I had one too many margaritas at a press event last night, but I think I'm making sense.
I'm getting it. I don't know.
Okay, so my question, I guess, is to an Irish audience, would the title Little Gem be understood to be about a person as opposed to
no. I think it's intentionally. It would, even in Ireland, the ambiguity of that would be there. So it would imply, if you were reading about it, or if you were reading the title, you would think gem like jewel.
Yeah.
And over the course of the play, you realize Gem is a person.
Right.
And so I think it would be the same experience in that way for an Irish audience.
I feel like there's so much there. That's because it's so intentional.
Yeah.
You don't just, because if it was supposed to be Little Jim, then
very different.
And that would also lead me to think that the play was about like a man or a boy.
Yeah.
And while they're it's not like there's a reference to that. It is very much a show about women.
Very much, and I think beyond about women, it's intentionally told from a female perspective, which is different and worthy of note. You know what I mean? Like, I think that part of it. It's not just that it's about the women and their relationships, although it is. But as we've talked about before, the relationship to men is also very important in the play. And I think it's led some people to be like, well, there's all this talk about men. Like, what is that? But ultimately it's the female perspective that is being told, even about those relationships to men and those relationships to each other and all of that. So I think it's as much a woman's story as it is, or a story about women, as it is the woman's perspective on a story.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know what I'm like so excited about this show is the way it's structured is it's almost like 3 separate one-woman shows that are braided together. There's actually very little interaction in the script. And I am so excited to like yell from the rooftops to theater teachers and women who are auditioning for dramatic roles that I have found your monologue.
It's like, really good.
I don't care what your age group is. And also, while there are some Irish-isms or whatever the word means when something like isn't necessary.
Colloquialisms or whatever.
Colloquialisms is totally the word I was looking for. You don't have to do it in a dialect. You could do this as like a woman from, like inner city Baltimore. You could do it as somebody from, Louisiana or as somebody from a different country. These stories we all know women in crisis at various stages of their life, and look no further because every line in the show is a monologue. It's
worth saying that as well, that it is written as that, right? It's written as these monologues, but also that that I was going to say something great and it's gone. Bye.
That's okay.
Sorry.
I got distracted because I just heard from Lauren. She's unfortunately not going to be able to join us, but it's you and me now.
Hi.
So scratch Lauren O'Leary from the agenda. No, Lauren is delightful, and I hope that everybody gets to go see her performance. She is a gem. You all are, and actually, her character's name is Amber, which is also a jewelry term. Yes. And I was like, oh, is she the little gem? But is Amber actually a gem? Because it's not a stone. It's a
resin, right?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I think that's probably just a coincidence. Yeah. Whereas if her name was like Emerald or something,
then it would definitely
it would be referential.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, Amber is just a lot of fun to say in the accent. So
Amber.
Amber. Amber. If you're doing like real Amber.
Oh yeah.
It's really fun to say.
But the playwright is Irish, so she wasn't like, this is fun to say in a dialect, right?
Probably
she wasn't writing
not.
it for. But
that's what I was gonna say. Sorry, can I?
Yes, of course.
So what you were saying about like ladies looking for monologues.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard this story or not, but actually Elaine Murphy, the playwright, wrote it because exactly that. She didn't have a monologue to audition with for a play. Yeah, and she was like, "Fuck this shit," and I'm gonna write something. So she wrote a bit of Amber for herself, and she
as just a standalone,
as just one of the monologues. I don't know which one it was, but she wrote one of those like parts of one of those monologues for herself, and went into an audition and did it. And they were like, "That's great. What's that from?" And she was like, "It hasn't been written yet." And they said, "Well, great. Let's make a play." And so it came out of that. I think so. Yeah, it came out of that. It came out of a collaboration with the theater company that originally produced it in Ireland is called Guna Nua, which means new dress, I think, in Irish. Or new frock or something. Anyway, I don't speak Irish. And they commissioned it, and they got her to write the play out of it. And
what
it came
an incredible
out of
story.
Yeah, I know, right? And so I do find it really I love that you said ladies look no further.
I'm always like, I guess how I learned to drive,
right?
Which I love, but it's also a very specific topic, and it's a very specific age.
Yep.
And
there's way more in that, because you have the range of ages. You've got young, very very young, sort of more middle age, and Lorraine could be anywhere from 35 to 50, I guess, 45.
Yeah. Well, it depends which monologue you choose.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Kay starts. You could play Kay at any age either, So
there are also these incredibly comedic moments and incredibly dramatic moments. So you could use a monologue from this show for a comedy or for a drama.
Totally. There's actually it was an interesting period in Irish theater writing. I mean, the monologue play is part of the history of Irish theater for sure, and the storytelling tradition of Irish storytelling, right, is such such a
interesting.
thing, and so it's part of that for sure. But in sort of the late, what they'd say in Ireland, noughties. So
that's the first decade of the 2000s.
Of the 2000s,
the
yes.
noughties.
The zero.
I love it.
What do you call them here?
I don't know. The nothing. We don't
O's.
call them anything.
Right,
We just say I would say the
noughties
early.
is fun.
I would say the early 2000s, but that could also now we're currently
still right because it's the whole millennium.
Right, yeah, the 2000s is 1,000 years, so we're definitely at the
beginning.
Yeah,
thank God. So anyway, around that time, there was a number of monologue plays being written. Like Marco Rowe is a very famous example. He wrote a number of plays, including like Terminus. But there's also a lovely Irish playwright called Abby Spallin, something like that. And she wrote a play called Pump Girl, which I actually used in my drama school auditions. But it's also a monologue play. There's a man, 2 men and a woman, 2 women and a man, something like that. But great monologues in that too, if you're looking for it. But my point is that there was this period, this sort of flowering of monologue plays that came out at this time. So it was very much part of the writing of the period, but also very much in response to like an active need for representation and work to do for women in the period.
Oh, that's great. And it actually brings me perfectly into the difference between seeing the show for the first time and seeing it for the second time.
Yeah.
Because what I didn't mention is that even though it is these monologues, and in the script there isn't a lot of interaction between the women until the very last sort of quarter of the show.
Which is directorial as well, which I don't know if that's worth saying, but like that's not actually in the text.
Aren't there moments when you exchange lines?
That is a choice that the director made.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's not in the actual text. The text is written as just monologues, straight monologues with no setting, no context, nothing.
Was the playwright involved in those changes?
She was included. She was part of the dialogue. She wasn't present.
Right.
She could only
because
make it
you can, I think it's important, especially for people who are making theater in like small markets and sort of learning as they go, that you can't just like change the script without the playwright's permission.
No, that's
and that's
true.
why when you were like, it's not in the text, I was like, wait a second. Did somebody ask her permission?
Absolutely. No. I have Mark Atkinson Borrell, our marvelous director. He was in communication with her from before day one and had a couple, because there were some changes, colloquialisms that we did have to change that just don't make sense here, or like references to specific cleaning products that they just don't have here. So we had to sort of make those clear. But one of the things he was really invested in was telling the story of the coming together as a family very clearly. And part of that, he felt, was these moments where we do pick up on each other's stories and get involved and say text that would otherwise have been the person telling the story quoting the character. We then start to say as the play goes on.
I love that. And to me, it was so like poignant because it did become clear that at first, these were 3 women who are like, even though they're literally each other's blood, and even though they all live, if not officially together, they're in and out of
each
other's
like pockets for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I like felt like the grandmother lived across the street or
She's
down
definitely
the block
down
or
the road.
something.
Yeah,
they just like pop into each other's houses, and but that they were basically islands, and they were each individually and sort of isolated in their crises, but through that choice that your director made and the permission that the playwright gave to have them actually pick up on and take parts of each other's stories, it was so clear that they were starting to accept each other as support and foundation for those crises. It didn't make them go away.
No.
But they were literally able to hold each other up.
It's incredible. I think it enhances the storytelling a lot, and hearing it from the audience perspective, that's great to hear that it does do that. But also for us as performers, it's an incredible gift actually, because a monologue play is really, really hard. And I mean, it's not hard work, but you know what I mean. It's hard.
You're not digging ditches.
We're not digging ditches, and but it's hard. It's vulnerable. It's very raw. There's nothing to hold on to, in the way that you would in a normal. In a standard sort of play, and you're out there like swimming on your own and hoping people respond. And so what's been really lovely about the process, both of rehearsal and then also what we've done with the production, what Mark has done with the production, giving it a setting, giving us a location to be, to really ground ourselves, and then also, which is not in the text, and then also finding these moments of connection between us as we go. It gives us a scaffolding so that we can really support each other and really be more vulnerable in the characters and in what the characters are doing. I have found it personally very helpful in terms of my work to be more raw and be more available.
I loved that the two actors who were not speaking at any given moment were still on the stage and having their own, whether it was reactions as if they were hearing it, or whether it was they were just still on their own journey in their own space. Like, that was how I watched the show the second time, was I watched the people who were not speaking.
Yeah.
Because I sort of had mentally recorded how, like, what the subtext on the speaker's face was. So I was able to really watch the reactions and the sort of story that wasn't being said aloud happen.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, there is this concrete space, and I don't mean concrete like that. That's what it's made of. I mean
just a slab
definitive.
Of concrete.
Yeah, I know. Can you imagine?
No,
it's a concrete space. No, it's actually set in what looks to me to be a waiting room of a doctor's office or some kind of similar. It is both generic and has detail. You know, there are signs on the walls about safety precautions, and there's a magazine rack, and there's like a coffee or water.
Tea.
Of course, Ireland.
Ireland.
Yeah, I was just putting my American bias on there and assuming coffee when I saw, you know, heated up beverage. But the you know, and there is one line in the text where Marsha Mason's character Kay references she's gone to the doctor and she's like said something about being stuck here in the waiting room.
I seem to spend most of my life in waiting rooms.
I didn't catch it the first time.
Huh. Oh, interesting.
And then the second time, because it's at the very beginning of the play, and I was waiting till, you know, there are plenty of things that unravel or become clear over the course of a good play. You don't know everything right up front. So I wasn't like listening for clues so much. But once I already had seen it once, I was able to I was like, we never really find out where they are. And then, so when she said I spend most of my life in waiting rooms, it was like a massive light bulb went on.
Yeah.
And I realized they are all in the course of waiting for something to happen, whether it's something specific, like I'm waiting to go in and see, like Lorraine goes to see a therapist, you know.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah. She's
a really big deal.
She's like not
she goes.
super excited about it, but she's had a mental breakdown. Can I just like take a sidebar here and say, it was so it felt like so non-American, Lorraine's employer's reaction to her emotional breakdown.
I know, right?
Like when she gets called, when she yells at a customer at the store where she works, and she gets called into HR, and I was like, oh no, they're about to fire her ass. And instead they're like, are you okay? We know your dad's been sick. Yeah. Like, can we offer you any help? And I went,
and here's the number for a therapist.
And
it's
just
out
like
of control.
All three of them are getting such good health care.
I know, right? There is something to be said for public health care.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're you know, it didn't feel like a foreign story to me. I mean, there are these colloquialisms, many of which are really funny, and I found myself incorporating the word grand into my vocabulary as meaning like sort of an ironic way of saying like being like, oh, great.
Yeah.
So, and then there are some that I just like didn't get at all, except from the context.
Yeah.
But that was a huge takeaway for me. I found in the same way that I automatically assume that somebody pouring like a hot brown liquid is going to be coffee. I just assume that when somebody has a breakdown at work, their boss is just going to be like,
chuck
next.
Yeah.
And so Lorraine's crisis was not the one I saw coming.
No, and it's interesting. I do think we talked about that a lot in rehearsal, and like I wonder, we talked about like whether that's also particular to like 2008. Like, would people now respond the same way? She's also been working in this job for 10 years. She's had like there's a there's a community there that is there to support her that is a little different than it would be here, I think. But again, the healthcare situation is the reality of that means that even bosses have resources that they can help their employees, and then they can do better and, go back to work and be fine.
Yeah, and Lorraine didn't end up, she had her breakdown. She got her help.
She gets her shit together.
I also love that her therapist's advice for her was do one nice thing for yourself this week. And she's like, damn it.
Yeah.
Why do I have to do that? I mean, it's not like they were go, here's some medicine.
Well, they do give her pills as well.
Oh, yeah.
She does get
tablets. Look, nothing against that. I take them myself.
No, look, they're and they work for Lorraine, which is great. It's exactly what she needs. But also the idea of self-care is sort of revelatory to her, which is hilarious.
And actually, it's a through line throughout the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
My favorite character in the show actually is not ever on stage. She's Amber's best friend.
Oh, Jo is the best. Jo's the best.
And I'm she is the representation of self-care or care.
Yeah.
She is the best friend. She's with Amber at her craziest, when Amber is out partying and doing shots, she's getting Amber more shots.
Definitely.
She is not a conscience. She is just a ride or die.
Absolutely. And she's so loving to Amber in ways that are not obvious but are deeply caring, and she's there. She's always, whenever Amber's about to do something ridiculous, Jo is there. She's always on it.
And she's not judging it.
No.
If Amber decides to go do something ridiculous, she's like, how can I be your ridiculous partner in crime?
Yeah.
And then when Amber's like, I don't want to do something ridiculous, Jo's like,
great.
Done, got it. I have your back.
As playing the mother, it's such I think I said this to you before, but the idea of a best friend, that your daughter has a best friend like that, is such a relief. And so getting to hear, going back to what you were saying about the other play that's happening on stage, which is the unspoken experience, it's such an incredible thing every night to hear Amber telling the story about Jo, and getting to hear that as a mother and sort of say, thank God she's got someone out there in the world with her, because she won't let me. So thank goodness she has somebody who's helping her. And there's this moment where Amber's crying, and Amber says, Jo is wiping black tears from my face. I didn't know until then I was crying. Jo says, this mascara's shite, which is she doesn't comment on the crying. She doesn't say, that girl who was mean to you is a bit. She doesn't say anything. It's just, the mascara's really bad, and that's enough, and they know, and they can look after each other in that. And that's just such there's such a deep level of knowledge of each other in that, implied in that. That it's such a relief for me as the mother to be like, oh, she's got someone, thank God.
Yeah. Well, especially when you're going through a thing where you kind of have to take care of yourself, and she's out there floating on her island. At least she's got Jo.
Exactly.
I would love to ask the playwright, and I wonder whether you guys talked about this, about the fact of that Jo's name is gender neutral. When the first, Jo is the subject of the first line of the play.
Yeah.
Jo's
head is hanging out the window,
barfing out of a limousine or
yeah,
Hummer.
So she's,
And I immediately went to J-O-E because I wasn't reading along in the script. And I was like, who's this Jo character? He sounds like a mess.
Yeah.
And then I find out that not only is Jo not a mess, but Jo's not a man.
Yeah.
The fact that they can get wasted and barf out of car windows together is a sign of their sisterhood.
Totally.
But I find all of the names, for Jem and Jo, and is Amber supposed to be, is it because it's a precious thing? And what is the etymology of the name Lorraine? And, and I just wonder.
That's so interesting. I wonder about that because for me, growing up around Ireland, the names seem very generational to me. Kay seems like such that generation. You'd be called Kathleen, you'd be called Mary, you'd be called Kay. You'd be some permutation on one of those is what most women were called. Maybe Rosie, maybe. And then Lorraine's generation, that's such it's a name. It comes from I don't actually know the etymology of Lorraine, but I feel like it's kind of, there might be
there's got to be a
saint
place
or something.
I think it's because there's a quiche named after it.
Well, there is that.
And
Lorraine.
I assume that
French
has
name.
to do with a location.
Yeah.
I have to Google it.
Google that. That's a good one. I feel like now I'm I didn't do enough character research. I don't know the etymology
well,
of my
look, you still have 4 days.
Name. Hey, it's going to transform the whole performance.
Oh my gosh, it's named after a region in France, originally meaning Kingdom of Lothar.
Excellent. So
And Lothar was a Frankish king, the great-grandson of Charlemagne.
oh, him. I know him. I know Charlemagne.
I heard of him.
But
Anyway.
but then Amber seems like such a the name Amber feels like Ireland moving out of a kind of more insular. Like the names Lorraine and the names Kay feel like part of the insular Ireland of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then Amber feels like a real like, oh, we have like American TV now. Do you know what I mean? Like so now we have
totally.
names that are different than just saints and Irish versions of names. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like Amber, and then the fact that Amber calls.
I mean, let's not worry about it.
Shit.
Like, we can, people, we're 30 minutes in.
Okay.
People have either decided to see the show
Or not.
And again, like, it's not when you're like, oh, this young woman is having terrible
Stomach
she
issues.
keeps barfing. What could that be? I don't think it's
No.
that much of a surprise.
And the truth is, it comes up very early on in the
Yeah.
play. So it's more the pregnancy that Amber has to deal with. That is not the reveal. It's what the sort of course of the play is about. Is what they then do about it
Yeah.
and how they experience life together with this new addition, which is the little gem. But that Amber wants to call the child Trey or Marshall.
Right.
Like those things are so American and so like referencing a culture outside of their own. So to me, the names seem very generational rather than tied to
gender.
And Joe is such a Josephine,
Joanne.
Joanne. Yeah, like Joe. I don't know. It just feels very.
It does feel. I mean, I feel like there's a whole. When I was a little girl, I desperately wanted my name to be Lacey, Stacy,
Amazing.
Macy, or Tracy.
Wow.
And that's what all my Barbies were named. And I grew up in the 80s, and I feel like that was the
zeitgeist.
era. And I feel like one generation later, it was Brittany and Madison, and there are names that you can
I wanted
really
to be called Rice.
Rice.
Yeah, because so do you remember the Beethoven movie?
With the dog?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The daughter in that was called Rice.
I don't think I ever saw it.
Oh, you missed out. It's good.
I should see it. But that was actually someone's name.
Yeah, I guess.
When
in
my
the
mom
movie.
was little, she thought that she wished her name was celery
Oh my
because she
God.
thought it was like if you didn't know it was a vegetable.
It sounds very celery. Yeah, I
right?
get that.
It's like Hillary.
Yeah.
It's no more ridiculous than Hillary.
No, it's true.
And for some
like
reason
celery.
it felt or like silvery. It has a sort of musicality.
It has a tinkle.
to
Yeah, no,
it.
it's totally. It's got like a tinkly kind of thing.
Oh, but man, did I want to be called Stacy, Tracy, Lacey, or Macy?
Wow.
We used to, my girlfriends and I would play, and we'd be like, okay, we would play that we were teenagers, and we would fight over which one of us got to be Tracy and which one was going to be
Stacey.
Lacey.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it.
But yeah, so I can totally see that. I also just, I'm going to have to get this playwright on the show.
You really should. She's honestly, she's pretty brilliant. She's just like a hardworking, cool lady who makes amazing things.
Did she come over to see the show?
She
at all?
came to opening. Yeah,
nice.
she was just here very briefly for opening night. And I think she was. I mean, I don't want to speak for her, obviously, but I think she enjoyed the production. But it's very different than any production of it before because it does have an actual setting. It's not stools and spotlights, which is how it has been produced before. And so I think she was a little like, whoa, I think in a good way.
That's what you do when your
ultimately.
child goes out into the world.
Well, yeah,
They
they
grow
to
up in a way you didn't
meet
necessarily.
it exactly. You have to sort of meet it where it then ends up. So, but she like we said before, though. I mean, she was obviously involved in the discussions, so it's not like it was totally out of the blue.
Of course,
She wasn't
of
like,
course. But when it comes to, I mean, you can stage it however you want.
Yep.
You know, I mean, and I guess it depends on the production, but you know, you get the
I mean,
rights.
unless you're
and-
doing Beckett, where I think they're very serious about how you.
Oh
stage
well,
it.
right, and there are, you know, like, it's funny because rights were not. Even though I got a degree in theater, I made my own plays. I did community theater.
Yeah.
I was an actor I did like TV commercial style quote unquote acting.
Amazing.
For a while, and like the idea of rights just was never, even in school, even in college.
didn't come up?
I mean, we did a senior theater festival and we had to get the rights, but it wasn't like. I just remember we wrote away. We were like, we want
Yeah.
to perform Nikki Silver's Pterodactyls, and we got a letter back that was like, cool,
Go for it.
go do it. You know?
I mean, in the context of educational institutions, it's different too, right? You get access to rights much more easily when you're like, it's not nobody's charging. It's not a production that's going to be touring. You know what I mean? It's like when it's in the context of education.
Well, and we also weren't trying to do like the Mikado with an all-white cast,
Right.
you know, and so we didn't encounter any of that. But I feel like for anybody who is there, my audience, my Broadway girl, Laura Heywood, professional fan audience is often young people who are really excited about theater. And I feel like at every opportunity, I want to say like, getting the rights and getting the
Hugely
correct
important.
permissions. If you're charging money,
Yep.
you got to do it. If you're just
I mean,
like
it's a legal issue. You just have to, like,
right, yeah. And you know, there was this TV show last year or the year before where a school put on Spring Awakening, and I think, wait, is that what it was? Oh my gosh, I'm like totally. I'm blanking on all of the details, but basically there was a school that was doing a musical. And, yeah, it was Spring Awakening, and they were like, "Oh, well, we can just cut that song, no problem." Or they were like, "Well, just switch the order of this," and it made me so mad because this was a network television show that I actually really enjoyed. It was not Glee; it was like the next generation of.
Was Angelica Houston in that?
Oh yeah, it was called Rise.
Oh.
No, Angelica Houston was not. You're thinking of Smash.
Okay.
Which
I just saw a poster and I was like, Angelica Houston.
Oh, yeah, no, Smash was like I loved it.
Oh.
It was sort of, Smash was to Broadway what, like, Grey's Anatomy is to the medical industry. It was
Oh.
a soap opera that pretended it was what it actually is like there. But anyone who actually works in the industry
no.
is like, how dare you?
Oh,
You know,
I want to watch it.
Oh, you totally should. Yeah, it's great. No, Rise was like, it was by the same people who did Friday Night Lights. I don't know if you ever watched that.
I didn't, but I know.
Which was sort of a
it.
primetime soap about
Football,
high school
right?
football. And this was supposed to be sort of the same thing, but high school drama. And it became a running joke on social media that everyone was like, are you gonna get the rights? Because they just never addressed it, and they did all of these things for dramatic effect that they never could have done. And I just felt like it was irresponsible
To not share that aspect of the process. Like,
Yeah.
to not be like, this is also a reality.
I mean, all they would have had to do would put in one line about it. But anyway, that's just me going off on a tangent.
No, but I do. I think it's really important because we do, for better or worse, we get a lot of information about how various different, whether it's medicine or theater, how
Right.
various different industries work through fictionalized programs.
Well,
right?
and this is one that really presented itself as relatable in real life.
Right.
You know, it was, you know, the kid got cast as a gay character, but his really religious parents wouldn't let him take the part because,
Right.
you know, and they made him switch schools. It was not. Like in Grey's Anatomy, there are plenty of things that would never actually fly.
Sure.
And I don't think anybody's learning about medicine.
Although I have a friend who knows all this stuff now, and she just like rattles off medical terminology. I'm like, how do you know that? She's like, Grey's Anatomy.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, I mean, we learn.
She's
from
also not a
everywhere.
doctor, so
Yeah,
you know,
right,
it's okay.
right.
We're okay.
But when it comes to high schoolers doing theater, there
Yeah.
are certain things that anyway.
No, totally.
I could do a whole
Well,
rant
I
about
think it gets into like the issue of artists making sure that artists are able to continue doing the work that they do
Mm-hmm.
by protecting them, by getting the rights, or giving credit where credit is due, or residuals, or whatever aspect of the art form you're involved in. It's hard enough to make a living
Right.
as a performer or as an artist of any stripe, and so making sure that when you're participating in that art, you're also doing right by other artists is a part of the community, is a part of the maintaining the longevity of the business of all of us, you know, and like really participating as a full member. You kind of have to do that. You have to do that with responsibility.
And Elaine Murphy, the playwright, could have written into the script, it is done on stools in spotlights.
Absolutely.
And the actors never interact with each other.
And if she
except
had,
to
you'd
reference
have to
each other
respect
by
that.
names. Right. And I keep thinking about how you and Marsha and Lauren really felt like a family to me.
Mm-hmm.
Even though off stage, I just feel like you and Lauren are like both my age, and you're not like, how could you be mother and daughter? I totally bought you as family members, and I imagine that sharing the stage and having these moments of connection, whether or not you're actually speaking to each other, helped with that. I mean, can you imagine if you'd rehearsed your monologues separately? And
We
then
did,
just,
and then when we started to actually come together, we were all like, oh, now it starts, because when you do rehearse separately, you're so alone, and I mean, we weren't finding that like connectivity,
the cohesion.
and then it was one day in rehearsal where like all the light bulbs went on, where we started to interact with each other. We had been sitting on stage not interacting with each other, and the director was like, it's so grim, it's so sad, why is it so sad? It should be funnier, it should be lighter, it should be, because there is all there's so much humor in it, and these women deal with tragedy by laughing. That is very actively, I mean, it's not just an Irish thing, but the Irish do it really well. And so it's very important that that's part of the play. And the poor Mark was like, what is going on? And then suddenly we started engaging with each other, changed everything. And then we all suddenly went, oh, there you are. Like, that's the person that I've been talking about that means so much to me. And look, they have a face and they're right there. And they can look at my eyes and I can look in their eyes, and we can have a connection, and that can make something happen. Because out of that comes something real. You know?
Did you have any feeling of intimidation or specific excitement about working with Marsha Mason, who's like a 4-time Oscar nominee?
I mean, yeah. Hello. Yeah, of course. She's like,
I mean, I know you've
legend.
worked with some pretty incredible, like very well established, award-winning actors in the past. I saw you in a play with Haley Mills.
Yes, that's true.
Party
also
Face.
Spectacular lady. Yes. I mean, I have been lucky. I've got to work with some really incredible people. I think I've been really lucky, particularly that I've had the opportunity to do plays that include a range of ages of actors, which is not the case all the time. I mean, a lot of new plays don't have older characters in them, or don't have, you know, you get sort of a very myopic view of things sometimes. And getting to work on classic plays or plays that have a spectrum, it means that you also then get to participate in the continuum of the theater, right? Like a couple of years ago, I did a play with Rosemary Harris, who is just legend of legends, you know. And I learned, I mean, I was like taking notes. I was like, this woman is, you know, knows how to do
You're
everything.
like, I'm just going to get a PhD
in watching Rosemary Harris, please. Thank you. Yes, I would be very happy with that. She's, you know, but she talks in the dressing room about Larry, and you're like, oh, you mean Lawrence Olivier? Wow.
Oh my gosh.
And you're like, well, how incredible to be part of this continuum, right? Like she worked with the greats of one era, and I'm getting to work with her, and you get like then Lauren, you go on. That's what theater is, right? It's like this continuum that goes on, and being connected to that
it's a living art.
Huge. So to answer your actual question, totally intimidated and totally thrilled, and really excited for the opportunity to watch Marsha work, because she is a spectacular actor, and getting to again take notes, steal ideas.
I was really intimidated and nervous about hosting this talkback, which I should mention was part of this initiative called Green Seats at Irish Rep, which is specifically designed so that really inexpensive tickets are available for anybody 35 or older. 35 or younger.
Yeah.
It's funny to me that like they've asked me to be a part of it because I'm actually over 35. But hey, I'll get in however I can. And to get to see this to get to see this show that's about generations of women and how we understand how not women specifically, but how generations understand the world in different ways.
Absolutely.
In a theater that has, you know, it's a subscription house, which tends to lead to older clientele, and then to bring in a new generation to see it in a different way and to be a part of that, and to get to sit down and talk to the three of you. It felt like the audience and the theater itself were in conversation
with each other. Absolutely. I mean, I think that was
a groundbreaking way,
intentional in the programming as well. Like,
I think so too.
It's a way to really engage with people. And
I was not nervous to sit and talk to you and Lauren. I was like,
what? I'm not scary enough?
I mean, I really relate to you. Like, and the fact is that you and I do have actual real life friends in common.
Totally.
So at the very least, we could have just sat and talked about our friend Allison.
Who's awesome.
Yeah, another awesome, amazing actress. Whereas I was like, what does one say to Marsha Mason? And what if she's like looking down her nose at me? Like, what am I doing? I finished my work for the evening and now I just want to go home and, you know, like, I don't know. She's a freaking Oscar, multi-Oscar
She's
nominee.
a legend. I mean, she's a legend.
And she was just as forthcoming and lovely and delightful and engaged as you guys were. And I'm like, oh yeah, human beings.
Totally a human being. And but also I think, she's worked on all kinds of mad, fabulous film sets and TV, and she does all kinds of stuff. But she knows that like when we participate in the theater, the joy of it is that it's about the audience that is right in front of you, and getting the opportunity to engage with them on a personal level is really a gift as well, and especially getting to engage with young people who have questions and want to talk about the play that they've seen. That's so exciting. I mean, I don't think there's an actor in the world who wouldn't be on some level delighted to talk about the work they're doing with someone who's interested.
I think that's true of theater actors. And I think that one of the things I had to remind myself that she's a theater actor, as opposed to...
She started in the theater.
Yeah, and there are people who are like movie stars who I think they show up, they find their light, they cry out of the right corner of the right eyeball according to what the director tells them to do.
Which is a skill.
Which is a skill. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're thrilled about the work and want to engage with the audience, because the audience isn't even going to see it for another year or whatever. So I think that I was like, what does one even say to a movie star? And then I went and I saw the show for the second time, and I went, this isn't Marsha Mason, the movie star. This is the theater actor in this intimate space who's creating important work. And
who cares about telling this story? Like, she was really engaged by this character, this story. I mean, Kay is a fabulous character. You don't get to see women like Kay on stage very often, even though they exist in all of our lives.
Yeah.
And so I think it was don't mean to speak for her, but I think it was important for her to participate in telling this story.
Yeah.
Know?
Well, so here's the thing about my radio show, about Laura Heywood Interviews. It is a live radio show at dnrstudios.com/Laura. The vast majority of people listen to it as a free podcast, which comes out a week later. Today, the day where we are live is September 4th, and Little Gem only runs through September 8th. Because it is so important to me that people find out about this show, I'm actually going to release the free podcast, a week early, so that people can find out about the show in time to see it. Because I would hate for the people, would I love to, for everyone who listens to actually pay $6.95 a month to get 8 interviews, in the month, and put some money in my pocket and yes, I
support your work as well.
Well, right, and I pay for the studio space to do this. Nobody's paying me to do it. The only way I'm able to do it is because there are people who do subscribe to get the episodes a week early. In this case, I feel like I would actually be taking an experience out of people's pocket if I'm like, hey, here's the free episode, and it's all about a show that you missed. Sorry. And I want to make an exception because I do want people to find out about the show in time to actually see it.
That's so generous of you. It's really cool.
I think it's just telling about the importance of the work and how much I enjoyed it and how much I've enjoyed getting to know you, and, the time that I spent off stage with Lauren and Marsha, and also just the whole team at Irish Rep has been so incredible to me.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful. They talk about themselves as a family. They are, there's snacks everywhere.
Really?
Which is pros and cons. But there's always cake, and there's always biscuits, and there's always tea. It's like a proper Irish family.
Yeah. I feel like if I hung out there long enough, I would start speaking in a brogue.
Oh, definitely. It's contagious.
But I've made legitimate friendships with Frances, who who arranged the talkback, and I don't know if I want to say, I thought her name was Marianne, but I think it's like Muran. It's spelled M-U-I-R. I don't know, but she has this little dog named Bear, and I live fairly close to the theater, and they're like, just come in and hang out with us whenever you want.
That's what I mean. And then you'll find the cake.
So that's, you don't want to discourage me. You know what I learned the night of that talk back? After you guys left, I stayed and hung out with those two and with Bear, the little dog. And there's, in your rehearsal room, which is where we did the talk back, there is, tucked away is this upright piano. It just looks like a sort of a generic piano. Mm-hmm. Do you know that's, oh my gosh, I just got goosebumps. That's the piano that Stephen Sondheim wrote Company on.
Stop. I did not know that.
Yeah, apparently he's best friends with Charlotte, who founded the Irish Rep, and he was like, I'm getting rid of this piano. Do you want it? And she was like, okay. And there's
all these
they told me that, and I was like, it was like
in the
seeing
walls.
was like seeing a ghost in a good way, where I just suddenly could feel the spirit of. And Company is one of my all-time favorite shows. When the revival happened in 2007, I think I probably saw it like 12 times. I sat in the rush seats were in the front row, and I just like wanted to breathe it in. And I was I identify so much with that character of Bobby, and I can't wait to see the new version that's coming with a female Bobby. But like, I feel like Irish Rep is literally a treasure trove that people don't think about. You know?
And it's been there for so long, and it's such an incredible testament to the willpower of Charlotte and Kieran. I think that they keep it going. They think the programming interesting. They get people, they get subscribers, they get people involved, and then they have these little treasures that you like wander along the halls and you're like, that poster, interesting. Or like a piano. There's all these little like gems hidden around the place.
Gosh, it all comes back. It all comes back. So one thing that I'm going to do something that I actively try not to do, but I'm going to at least do it consciously, which is that when someone is wrapping up a project, especially one that's been so like delightful, I think that it's not fair to be like, so what's next for you? Because it's like,
right.
But I also want to know what's next for you.
Oh God, the
because
dreaded question for all actors.
I know if people are, like if they didn't get a chance or they don't get a chance to see Little Gem, I still want them to be able to support your work. And so I guess I would say, what are you most looking forward to after this run ends, either professionally or personally?
I think what I'm most looking forward to is a break, because I was doing another show right before this, so I was rehearsing Little Gem and performing in a different play in the evening. Oof. So I started that in beginning of May, so I haven't had I've had days off. Like I've had a 1 day off a week since May, and I haven't slept properly. So I'm really excited about.
You're like Lorraine.
A nap. I'm pretty much Lorraine, and I have we got.
Can you take yourself to Paris?
Oh God, that would be so nice. No, I don't have a Nile to take me to Paris, but I am going to go. I'm going to Ireland, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm looking at wedding venues.
Oh, you're going to get married in Ireland?
Yes, I am.
Are you going to be wearing green?
God, no.
Can you imagine?
Nor white, perhaps. I might not wear white. I haven't decided yet, but.
Cool.
Yeah, so I have some like life stuff to get on with, which is very exciting. And then honestly, the process of auditioning and drumming up more work is daunting, but also is part of what we do.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that as well, getting back into the muscle of auditioning, which is a very particular thing that you have to be in sort of form for. And because I've been working for so long, I'm sort of that muscle's a bit lax. So it'll be good to get back into that.
Well, you've got some good monologues to choose from.
I do. I've got
do you think
all
you'll
the
use Do you think you'll use any of these monologues as audition pieces?
I don't know. It's been a while since I've had to audition with something of my own. Like I feel like when I was auditioning for like grad school and stuff, like you have to bring a monologue that you do. But when you're sort of in the world auditioning for specific projects, you tend to need to provide material from the project. Like they ask you to.
Of course, that makes sense. I guess
project.
I never really thought about it because I'm so used to talking to musical theater actors who come in with their book.
Right.
And
Very
you sing
different.
something from your book. And I just assumed that dramatic actors had a book of monologues in that same way.
No. I mean, usually you have like something that you, like I could probably pull a Shakespeare out if I needed to,
I want to like test you right now.
I might get about halfway through and then be like,
will you tell me like what your favorite Shakespearean role or play is?
I love Margaret from the history plays.
Oh,
Queen
wow.
Margaret.
That is not that I didn't expect it from you, but like I don't expect anybody to love the histories.
They're kind of great because they're not history. They're political plays. They're political dramas, and there's murder, and there's intrigue, and there's plotting, and come on, it's great.
Just like our actual politics.
Exactly, alarmingly so. But yeah, Margaret is spectacular. She also shows up in like four of the history plays. So she, in an ideal world, someday maybe if I got to reboot the RSC here, you'd get to like play all her whole trajectory, because she goes from being like the ingenue to being this. By the time you get to Richard III, she's this like cursing, snarling hag, and like, huh, how fun
Yeah,
would that be?
that's so cool.
So she goes on this crazy journey. But my monologue that I auditioned for grad school with was actually Joan of Arc. So I do love Joan of Arc. She's a very small part of that play, but she shows up and she does this like badass speech, and then they're like, we're gonna kill you anyway, and she's like, no, please don't. So she's like an interesting,
Sorry.
weird, yeah.
That's one of those plays that like you don't go to see how it ends.
No, you do know that.
One of the most important and enduring lessons about theater that I ever learned was something my dad told me when I was a little girl, which was nobody goes to see Romeo and Juliet to find out how it ends.
Right.
And I was like, oh, right. You don't need to be surprised in order for theater to have an impact. And that's why
process. It's the journey, right?
Yeah, that's why I wasn't that worried about talking about what Amber's situation is.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It is the experience of the journey.
How do they
go on.
get there?
Yeah.
It's time to wrap up, but Irish Rep, as I've said, has been so lovely to me, and I'm so fond of this play in particular that feels, even though it's a revival from 10 years ago, so it still feels so fresh and new. And it's a nonprofit theater, which means that I'm going to make a donation in honor of you and in honor of Little Gem. And I would love for my audience to do the same.
Yay!
I'd like to say that lots of little drops can make a big splash. And so if everybody throws a few dollars towards Irish Rep today, maybe we'll get more programming like this, and maybe we'll see more of you there. And and there's no doubt that no matter what, the programming is going to continue to be wonderful, and I hope they continue to let me be part of the family. Where can people find you on social media?
I'm on the Instagram, she says, like the Luddite she is, 'cause she is not so good with the technical stuff. I think it's Meaney B.
It is MEANE
YB.
YB. Meaney B.
With an E, yeah.
Yes, not like a meanie.
Although,
You're very nice.
Thanks.
More
like a blue meanie.
Yeah. MEANEYB on Instagram. And also follow Irish Rep on Instagram and Twitter, just at Irish Rep. And I'm Laura. You can find me on social media at Broadway Girl NYC, which is my social media handle, but not my identity. I just want to thank everybody for listening, and I hope that you find a way to see Little Gem at Irish Rep now through September 8th. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.